Okay. I have a payment made every period. We take the interest out of that payment, the rest applies to principal. But if the payment is less than the interest earned in that period, then I'm applying a negative principal reduction. The amount of principal I pay, that term is negative, which means I have to add to the outstanding balance. The unpaid interest is called capitalized interest, is added to the balance. Now, here's an interesting accounting trick. In terms of the totals, we talked about the total paid, the interest paid, principal paid, all of that, this still counts as interest. So for tax purposes, it's interest earned, even if it's a negative number. If it's a negative number, it reduces my tax load rather than increases it. So quite deliberately underpaying, capitalizing your interest can be used as an accounting trick to change your tax burden. Sneaky, sneaky, sneaky mothers. And by the way, this is also why the minimum payment on your credit card is so low. Because if you pay less than the interest they charge you, they get to add the interest to the balance and charge you interest on interest on interest. Okay, my outstanding balance continues to rise. It's a bad thing to get caught in that sort of a credit card trap. But here's an example. We're going to borrow $100,000 at 12% APR, paid monthly for 12 years. Again, we're going to split the payments so that in the first 6 years, my payment will be half what it is for the last 6 years. So whatever payment I make for the first 6 years, I make double that payment for the next 6 years, and then I pay it off. That change in the payment amount, I'm expecting a raise, I'm expecting something else. Somewhere along the line, one of my other expenses will drop out in 6 years. I'll be able to put more money to this payment. The question asks, how much do you owe at the end of a year? Okay, the first thing I need is to know what my payment is. So let's figure this out. I've got 6 years worth of payments at whatever Z is. That's a level annuity for 6 years at a pure period interest rate of 0.01. So I know that for the first 6 years, payment is Z, 72 payments at 0.01. For the next 6 years, the payment is 2Z. There are 72 payments at 0.01, but that would only take me 6 years, and I've got to go back to the beginning, which is 6 more years So I have to multiply this by 1.01 to the negative 72 to bring that back in time to the day of the loan. So this is the 6 years at the beginning. This is the 6 years at the end. So remember to bring it back to the same time. This is the present value of my loan. So this is $100,000. My goal is to figure out Z. So if I factor out the Z and the A72.01, I'm left with 1 plus 2 times 1.01 to the negative 72. Well, fortunately for me, all of these numbers are calculatable. So let me grab my calculator. Let's figure out A7201 and the other parenthetical term. We'll write down a bunch of decimals. A7201, 1 minus 1.01 to the negative 72 over 0.01. Please stop twisting. What do you get for this number? 15039. What's the rest of it? 148. 148. And then here, this is a much smaller number, 1.97699,217. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 100,000 and divide by each of those numbers. 100,000 divided by this number, then divide by that number. So this is my monthly payment. I'm going to round up, so it's $988.89. Now, my first reaction is that this is a problem. Because remember, I'm borrowing $100,000 at 1% a month. What's the interest paid in the first month? Uh-oh. So what happens over the course of this first month? And my balance is going to keep increasing over the course of that entire first year. Now, I have two choices because what the question, remember, asked me for is what's the outstanding balance at the end of the first year? I could just go into Excel and make a table. Or I could actually get the outstanding balance at time 12. We had two different formulas last time to find the outstanding balance. I can either look back from time 12 and bring forward all those payments, or I can look forward from time 12 and bring back all the payments. So do you want to look back or forward? Hang on a second. There are 72 payments in the first 6 years and another 72 in the second 6 years. If I look forward, I have to deal with a whole lot of payments. If I look back, I only have to deal with 12 payments. Let's use the retrospective form. So if I'm using the retrospective form, I need to look at all of the previous payments and bring them forward to this time. That's the loan amount brought forward a year. And then I subtract the sum of all of the payments. Payments were all the same for this point. And then it's 1.01 to the time I'm moving minus L. Now this looks like it's going to be a very complicated formula. But this turns out to be direct. By the way, I forgot. OB0 is 100,000. I is 1.01. So then this will be L. You know what? That 989 is a constant. Let's pull that out. 988.89 sum 1.01 to the 12 minus L. L goes from 1 to 12. The hard part is that last bit, right? That's disgusting looking. This. Except that's a lot nicer than I think it is. Let's take a look at that a little more closely. What is that expression? All right. When L is 1, that's going to be 1.01 to the 11th. When L is 2, that's going to be 1.01 to the 10th. When L is 3, that's going to be 1.01 to the 9th. And it's going to keep going until we get to 12. 1.01 to the 0 is just 1. Wait a minute, this is geometric. That's the sum of a geometric series. Yay! I know that one. It's a finite geometric series in terms of 1 plus I. Grab your formula sheets. The ones from the ACTEC pile. And I say to myself, I've seen this before. 1 plus I, all the way up to 1 plus I to the n minus 1. That's the definition of Sn. That's my future value factor. Oh, this got really nice. This number right here, this geometric series, is S12.01. Oh, yay! So this formula gives me 100,000, 1.01 to the 12 minus 988.89 times S1201. 1.01 to the 12 minus 1 over 0.01. Because all of those payments were level, they were all 988.89. I can actually work this out in one fell swoop. Yay! So what do I owe at the end of the year? So here's the problem. Because I was underpaying, the interest was $1,000 and I only paid $988.89. I ended up accumulating an additional balance. My balance went up for the first few years. In this case, for the first 1 year. 100,000, 140.90. So if my payment amount is less than the interest earned at any given month, in particular, in this case, in the first month, I know that my balance overall will continue to increase. This capitalized interest results in an increased balance. I did actually do the entire sheet in Excel. Here it is. And you'll notice all of this principal paid, PRT, is negative because the interest I'm earning is more. It turns out, because of the way we structured this particular set of payments, that they would go from level at $988 to level at $1,900. We were going to double the payment after 6 years. I don't actually start making a dent in principal until I double the payment. So on payment 73, when I go from 988.89 to 1977.78, that's when I start to actually decrease my period. I'm charging interest to float this loan for 6 years with that slightly lower payment. That's not financially good in my head that I build up the balance even though I'm making a payment every month. But this is common. Maria, you're looking at me like this is unhappy. Talk to me. No. Okay. Just that it's 8 o'clock in the morning. I understand. Quite often, home loans look like this. You buy a house. Right now, a home in Greensburg is probably somewhere in the range of $200,000, maybe $250,000. If I go down Mount Thor Road, I'm going to spend a whole lot more, but I can go the other way. So let's say it's $200,000. Right now, interest rates are around 6%. If I amortize that over a long period, a 15-year mortgage, a 30-year mortgage, I will actually see quite frequently my interest payments rise. My outstanding balance rises in the first year and doesn't come down until more of my payment is going towards principal.
So because the interest rate is higher than what you're paying.
Right. In this particular case, we worked out the payment based on the idea that we were going to double after 6 years. And the payment was less than that first interest payment. Whenever this is the scenario, this is going to be my problem. But if I'm a business, capitalized interest moves in my tax directions. So there are tax benefits to doing this. I'll leave that to Dr. Warfield to explain in more detail. So what if I say to myself, this is a bad idea to just make the level payment and ignore the fact that the interest is higher? I'm always going to pay all the interest and then pay some towards principal. So then I can call a loan that's got level payments to principal. So let's design this same idea.
Sorry, what was the other one called? Sorry.
Capitalization of interest. Maria.
Okay.
You're welcome. Let's take a smaller loan this time. I'm only going to pay it back quarterly. at 2% per quarter. Notice they gave me the rate differently in this particular loan. Each payment is $250 to principal and all outstanding interest. They asked me for the amortization schedule. Okay. I just want to write out the beginning of this schedule by hand for a second. And then I'll jump into Excel and show you what I did there. At time 0, my outstanding balance is 3,000. The interest rate is 2% per quarter. So I'm going to write that rate over here so I remember it. What's the interest owed at time 1? And I know I want to pay $250 to principal. So that means my payment is 310. This is interesting. Normally we work out the payment first, but this time I'm working out the payment second. And that means right here, this is now 2750. And this column is going to stay the same all the way down. So that PR column, principal repaid, is constant, as opposed to in all of our other loans where that column varied. This time, I don't know the actual payment amount. It's going to change because the interest is going to change. What's the interest in the second payment? Because it should go down by 2%, by $250, 2% of that is $5, goes down 5, which means this column is going to go down 5 every time, which means my payment is going to go down by 5 every time. But this is going to go down by exactly the same amount every time because the principal reduction is the same. I ate it. Since I know I'm going to pay $250 each quarter out of a $3,000 loan, I know I'm going to pay it off in 12 quarters. 3,000 divided by 250 is 12. So I know it's going to take me 12 payments. I just don't know the interest amount each month. Oh, I can calculate that out directly. This interest paid gives me a decreasing annuity. They're decreasing by an arithmetic amount. I should be able to use DS12. Total interest paid would be the sum of this column. Eek, what happened? I didn't write sum correctly. Sum. Yeah, it helps if I type properly. Here we go. Since it wants me to make the schedule, this is actually the answer to the question to come up with this entire table. This is why doing this in Excel is beneficial. But the calculation isn't particularly hard. That decreasing sequence of interest paid makes my life easier. Questions? I like this idea. Pay off the interest, pay a fixed amount towards principal, get yourself out of the hole. This balance, outstanding balance, is going down by a constant amount every time. Don't save the change. Thank you.
Is the balance always gonna go down the amount of the payment principal?
Yes. Yeah, that's the way we calculate this column is you take this column minus, you take the previous one minus this. And as long as that principal we paid is constant, it's taken down the exact same amount every time. Questions?
Why would people do capitalization of interest instead of interest?
Mostly because they realize that their payment affordability scheme doesn't match this idea, right? With a $100,000 loan that I was going to pay back over 144 payments, I was looking at $1,000 a month. But the setup was that I have this other payment, and that's why I'm going to pay smaller for the beginning and then bigger at the end, right? If I can do level payments all the way through, then I will never run into that problem because the level payment will always be higher than the interest owed in that first case. It is when either payment level has to vary or interest rate is going to vary that capitalization of interest becomes a viable alternative. And again, there are tax break purposes to it in some cases. I am not a tax attorney by any stretch of the imagination. They mentioned it in the textbook and I went, really? Did about 10 minutes of Googling and went, I don't understand this. Because the law changes enough over time that I've never managed to keep that straight in my head. 99% of the loans you encounter will be level payment annuities. These are the oddball cases, but they're happening in interesting enough cases that it's worth knowing what to do and what the repercussions are. As a matter of fact, one of the more common behaviors, pre-World War II primarily, was an interest-only loan. Here's the deal. From now until the end of the loan, each month, just pay the interest. At the end of the loan, you owe the principal as a single balloon payment. So your last payment is the big one. But everything else, you just pay the interest. Normally, what somebody does is they set aside money to be the last payment. But they make a payment to the lender in the interim. But my brain goes, if you could afford to set aside the money, why wouldn't you just pay the lender?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
If I have the money. So this is the problem. This is again a common real financial trap. Loan me the money, I'll pay you the interest. I'll make a number up. L is $1,000. I is 1% per week. Loan shark rates. My friend Louis is going to loan you the money. And if Louis don't get his money back, we'll have some problems. So 1% a week. All I have to pay at the end of the week is how much? $10. I can pay $10. And I can keep paying $10 every week until the end of the loan, at which point I owe 1,010, right? So I'm thinking to myself, I got money coming in at the end of the month. I can float $10 a week for the next 4 weeks. Then I can give him $1,000. I get paid at the end of every month. I can do this. What happens? My paycheck is short. I don't get paid the amount. My money coming in isn't what I thought it was going to be, and now I have to float a bigger loan. This again is a not uncommon real person trap. People do this to themselves a lot. Now, I will also say almost all mortgages pre-World War II worked this way. All equipment loans, farm loans, they worked this way pre-World War II. Here's the money for the year's farming equipment and your seed purchase. You've taken out this loan from the bank. You're planting and tilling and working the fields. You're not going to get paid until you bring all that stuff to market, right? 9 months from now. So your loan is to pay your payroll and your home and your business expenses. And in a year, you'll be able to pay back the loan. Just pay me the interest in the meanwhile. That still happens today. The U.S. Department of Interior, Department of Agriculture, does exactly that sort of loan today. Small farms are in deep because of this. When the policy change on exports, the tariffs went into effect for soybeans, for example, a bunch of soybean farmers went, wait a minute, I've got loans of millions of dollars, and I'm counting on selling soybeans to pay those back. What are you doing? And so some tariff and trade policies became a big issue based on this sort of loan. Do I want to do this? No. But I'm also not a farmer. And I'm not running a business where my income is low, high, low, high, low.
So risky.
It is. It is. At the same time, you start up a business. If you want to make a level payment the whole way through, that level payment's going to be much higher than that interest-only payment, isn't it?
But like counting payment as well.
I'm sorry?
Counting the balloon payment as well.
No, just counting the interest-only payment. Yeah. So is it worth it for me to run the risk on the end versus being completely unable to pay in the middle or at the beginning? A startup business is going to run negative balances for quite some time. If I do a loan like this, I can build the accrued principal once I get out of the hole at the beginning, provided my loan is long enough.
So if a farmer or small business is doing that, do they have limited liability, or can the bank take everything real on the way if they don't pay the last payment?
That's a really good question. And that actually becomes part of what it means to lose the loan. What's default? In some cases, there is a percentage leverage agreement. You've paid back 60% of the loan. You still owe us another 40%, we could roll that into your next loan. Or I could say, I'm going to repossess some of your stuff. Or you lose the farm completely and we put it up for auction. All of these things happen in real life. So that's the problem. We've made an assumption throughout every loan we've dealt with, you're going to pay it back. What happens when you can't? Sometimes a borrower misses a full payment. My first house here in Pittsburgh, my mortgage payment was not very large, and I physically went to the bank every month and put the check on the table and got a stamped receipt. 1 month they lost it. I walked in the next month and paid my mortgage, and they said, "Where's your late fee?" And I said, "What late fee?" I said, "You missed last month's payment." I reached into my bag, pulled out the receipt and said, "Like hell I did." And by the way, it took about 3 months to resolve that. And it stuck on my credit report for a year while they sorted it out. But they were wrong and admitted it, and I got everything fixed. But what if I hadn't? 2008, the housing crisis. People stopped making their mortgage payments. What did the banks do? Well, a lot of different things. The lender, in this case the bank, has to figure out what I can do to judge that your ability to make the repayments and adjust the rate I lend to you at accordingly. Remember at the very beginning of the course, we talked about the prime rate. The prime rate's for the best lenders, the best people who I expect to pay back everything. I'll give them a low rate. But if I think you're risky, I'll raise the rate a little. And that risk adjustment is to account for how many people in this group I think are going to short me. Whether it's in the middle by a little bit or in the long run or in that balloon payment at the end, I need to figure that out. So let's consider what happens if I have a known default rate in a group. Suppose the default rate, complete failure to repay, is 1%. So in a group, I think 1% of this group of people will just take the money and run, and I'll never see a dime.
Primary.
No. This particular group of people. I don't know this. This is the problem. We're making some dramatic assumptions on groups of people, right? I'm lending to, I'm going to sound really, really racist here. I apologize. I'm lending to an inner city group, and I don't think they have enough money to pay everybody to pay me back. I think some of these people are a little sketchy. They're going to cost me something. I think 1% of them are just going to run away. So I know that I need to make 10%. If I thought everybody was going to pay me back, then I would just charge 10%, right? But I think some of these people aren't. So I need to ask, what interest rate should I charge to get 10% returns? Huh. All right, wait a minute. Let me make my life easy. Let's assume there are just 100 people in the group. Um, If there are 100 people, I'm only going to get paid back from 99 of them. If I want a 10% return on investment, the future value is 100 people times 1.10%. By the way, this assumes everybody gets the same size loan. That's $110, right? So in this case, I'm assuming everybody got a loan of one, but it could be 100, 100,000, 1 million. I don't know what I'm loaning out here. But I'm only getting 99 repayments. So if I'm taking this $110 and I'm dividing it among 99 people, what's that? Aha. So the interest rate here is 11.11%. I wanted to get 10%. And if everybody was 100% going to pay me back, I'd just charge 10%. But there's a little bit of risk here, and the additional interest of 1.11%, that's my risk premium. That's how much the rate goes up because I think you are a risky group. In farmers, I could look at the history of farming in this area and I could say, hey, soybean crops have been really good in this area. I should be able to get my money back. You guys are going to get no risk premium. Oh, you guys have had droughts for the past 5 years. This loan is pretty risky. Let me look at what the chances are that your crops will fall through. Oh, wait, tax policy just changed. I need to account for that too. This is part of why businesses are having trouble right now making future forecasts, is because they don't know how their products will be accepted or sold in the future. They can't predict, they can't figure out the risk premium. And if they can't figure out how risky that next investment is, they don't want to make it. So they're not hiring. They're not selling, they're not investing, and our economy is in trouble because of it. As soon as I can make better future predictions, then I'm happier as a lender or a borrower. I apologize right now for speaking in political current terms, but this is why the Federal Reserve Bank that sets interest rate policies has historically been outside the influence of the president, so that what the president wants politically doesn't affect the predictive ability of businesses. And this laissez-faire behavior on economics and economic policy insulates it from political uncertainty. When the two get too mixed up, this sort of stuff starts to be a problem. Default risk became a very big issue around housing. It has not become a big issue around farming so far, but mostly that's because of federal guarantees and federal subsidies. The other big federal issue where default was a problem, higher education. Remember the Education Loan Forgiveness Act stuff? Because they were looking at default rates on college loans. And that was a problem because people were getting degrees and then like, I can't get hired even though I have this degree and I owe all this money. I can't pay it. I'm not going to. And student loan debt forgiveness was predicated on the government guaranteeing those loans in a sense. And then, hey, we'll eat the money, walk away. It didn't go very far. President Biden tried to do it. It didn't succeed. There was a lot of court challenges and different things happened for different people. And then there was some debt forgiveness, but not a lot of it. And so who knows? But that's one of the arguments. What's the risk premium for those loans? And that's why student loan rates are different than prime rates. They're federally subsidized in a lot of cases. I'd love to tell you this is not applicable. You all are college students. It matters. Talk to me, Maria.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Okay, so now that the government has like policies, like what is it?
The government shut down at the
The
moment?
government shut down,
Yeah.
yes. So are all of these like federal like subsidized like farmers gonna suffer from this as well?
Oh, yes.
Because government like,
They're not paying you.
yeah,
As a matter of fact, the news this morning was talking about food stamps. There are two food assistance programs, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, which used to be called food stamps, and the Women, Infant, and Children Program, WIC. And they're both federally funded.
so we'll stop right now.
They have no money to pay out new payments. SNAP benefits are paid a month in advance. So the October benefits are already in people's pockets. But the WIC benefits are not paid in advance. They don't get any new money until the government restarts. They're working out of their reserves and their savings accounts right now. The woman on the radio this morning said, we think we have about 2 weeks of money before we have to start thinking of who to cut. And the minute you cut somebody, they don't come back. Yes, people are going to suffer for this. Is it a smart idea? No. There are lots of political places to place blame as to whose side you believe is responsible for this. I'm going to say the person who is most responsible for this is the president. But that's also because the last government shutdown was 6 years ago under President Trump. The one before that was in 2008, 10 under Obama. But again, it was over healthcare costs. So we're seeing a lot of history repeating itself. Bleh. All right, more questions.
Last question.
Oh, yeah.
So then, so if banks give out, loans, right?
Yes.
Like, whatever risk they had before tariffs were in action, and now tariffs are in action, but that loan wasn't set to be paid after, like it started before the tariffs, and then it's to pay after the tariffs, so our banks gonna lose money because they didn't take into account tariffs, and then that's gonna increase the amount of farmers that cannot pay.
Potentially, yes. But if you're looking at farm loans, again, farm loans have federal insurance guarantees.
Okay.
So there will be some coverage for the bank through the government sometimes. Some banks will suffer for this. Local community banks being the primary ones. Small banks who don't have large federal loan guarantees may or may not. But a lot of farmers do direct business with the federally guaranteed loan banks. So there's some coverage there. This again goes well beyond my understanding of the entire banking system. I only have a small piece of it. I listen to way too much political and economic news trying to keep myself on top of this course. More questions. Risk premiums get adjusted midstream sometimes because some loans have variable interest rates. So I can adjust the rate to account for a risk premium as well as just to account for general economic terms. When I have level payments, it's the easiest possible setup. I am 100% certain that if you look at a car loan, a mortgage today, or any other long-term purchase plan item, you're getting a level payment annuity. If you buy with a credit card, that's a completely variable payment because you can decide how much to pay your credit card each month, right? In some cases, you could have a minimum balance of 0 and not have to pay anything this month. They'll still charge you interest. And your balance will go up like we were looking at the beginning, but I can use my credit card that way. That's allowed. But if I have a fixed repayment loan, then my amortization schedule gets systematic.
When you say level payment, is it level to principal?
No, level period, level principal and interest. The same payment every time. The level to principal had the interest vary. This is the same everywhere.
Oh, okay.
And this is my quote favorite version of this because it means that every line of the entire process is exactly the same. So on page 171, we have a giant variable driven amortization table. Let's take a look at this sucker. Holy crap, is this disgusting. All right, some assumptions. Our level payment is 1. So that means our loan was for the present value. Hey, at whatever interest rate, that's AN. That's nice and easy. That's beautiful. And it means that this column is always going to be the present value of all of the payments brought back. That's a sequence of ANs at every step. It means that the interest is going to be the I times AN. Wait a minute, that's 1 minus 1 plus I to the negative N. And that means the principal paid is 1 plus I to the negative N. So here's what happens. Over time, this number goes down and this number goes up. The payment amount stays the same, but the fraction of the payment that goes towards interest gets smaller and the fraction of the payment that goes towards principal gets higher. So at the very beginning of my loan, I might only pay a couple of pennies towards principal. And most of my payment will go to interest. But as I continue making the payment, more and more of it goes to principal, less and less of it goes to interest. At each and every step here, the prospective and retrospective forms become simpler to deal with. I would recommend heartily you put a bookmark on this page for this section. It's going to be fairly useful to simply refer to these items. So we now have the total payment is N. Because KT is 1 for all T. The loan amount, which is OB0, is ANI. OBT is a N minus T I. Literally, I don't have to use anything crazy. Prospective and retrospective form become identical. This is also L1, I lost the page, 1 plus I to the T minus K S T I. But that equation, this relationship between these two, wait a minute, K was 1. This was the definition of the relationship between A and S. All right. Let's buy a house. Ready? I'm going to buy a house. $250,000 house. We're going to make a 30-year mortgage. Now, right now, housing rates are somewhere around 6%. By the way, 5 years ago, housing rates were around 2%. 15 years ago, they were around 8%. Right now, I'm a risky mortgage person, so they're going to charge me 9% because of the risk premium involved. I am making a dramatic assumption. What's my payment amount? There you go. That's all I need to do to solve. To figure out how much I'm going to pay on this house each month in principal and interest, I'm just using the present value of an ordinary annuity. It's 360 because it's 30 years at 12 months. 9% APR is 0.0075 per month. So let's see, this is 1 minus 1.0075 to the negative 360 divided by 0.0075. Don't round. Let's keep all the decimals here. What do you get for a payment? Great. If I were to round, I'd get to 56, right? That 4/10 of a cent is going to be added up 360 times. That's a few pennies, right? But what happens is that as I work at the interest and principal references, this doesn't actually cause a whole lot of difference in the interim, but in the long run, it can be quite a substantial difference in what's the first year, what's the second year, what's the third year sorts of payments. Okay. What's the interest charged in the first month? What's I1? Which means if I make this payment and this is the interest, how much did I actually pay towards principal? Yeah. 136.55642. In other words, I paid $2,000 to the bank and they gave me credit towards principal for less than $137. They took their interest first. Now, the question in the book actually asks, how much will I have paid in a year? After a full year of making $2,000 payments, I will have paid $24,000 to the bank. How much will I owe? Well, I can go directly here. There's my outstanding balance at time t. I want to use 12. My payment is this number. What I really need is this. The outstanding balance at time 12 is 2011.556542 times a 348.0075. Because it's n minus t, n minus 12, I still have 348 payments outstanding. So how much is my outstanding balance? Now, again, I'm going to keep all the decimal places. $248,292.0072. Hey, wait a minute. The loan was for $250,000. Subtract that from $250,000. $1,707.992791. You took out a loan for $250,000. At the end of a year's worth of payments at $2,000 each, you've paid down your loan by $1,700. The rest of the money went to interest. So how much interest did you pay in this first year? Well, that would be 12 payments minus this amount. In the first year, you paid $1,700 towards principal and $22,000 in interest. Holy crap. Now, I can ask the same question not at year 1, but at year 30. Let's look at the last year of the loan. In the last year of the loan, I'm going to need OB 348. So that would be I do the same calculation, it'd be K times A 12.0075. Because there are only 12 payments left. This tells me how much I owe in principal at the end of the 29th year. What do you get for this number? 1.97. I got 353, but that's okay. We'll run with it. I'm good with that. 1.0075 to the negative 12 divided by 0.075 times my payment amount.
Oh, okay.
Yep, exactly the same calculation. Now, I made 12 payments this year, right? Did I make a copy error?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, good catch. Two zero one 1.556542. Yeah, and I did. Okay, good. We'll run with your number. Good thing, because I did it wrong and you did it right. Good catch. Okay. I still make 12 payments. 12 payments of $2,011.556542. But now I'm going to pay off this amount in principal. This is the principal paid in year 30. Because I have to pay off the loan at the end of that year. How much interest will I have paid? The interest in year 30 is this many payments minus the principal. What's this amount?
$1,136. 47,036.
I got a slightly different decimal, but I think that's because we rounded in different places. It's okay. But take a look at that. In the first year, I only paid $1,700 in principal and $22,000 in interest. In the last year, I only paid $1,100 in interest. All the rest of it went to principal. I do have the entire schedule for us. Here we go. Helps if I put in the right number. 250,000. Notice this display is rounded. $2,011.56. 30-year payment at 9%. Here's the entire schedule. The end of 1 year, how much principal I've paid, how much interest I've paid. Look at these two columns. Column C is the interest. Interest keeps going down. Column D is the principal. It keeps going up. By the time I'm halfway through 180 payments, they're much closer together. 270 payments, they've switched. By the time I get to the end, almost all of my money is going towards principal instead of interest. Why? Because at the very beginning, I still owe $250,000, and the interest on that is quite a lot. So I make a payment that's just a little bigger, bring my principal down each month. Level interest, level payments help me do that. Now, Some mortgages in Canada require me to quote the rate every 6 months rather than annually, because variable rate mortgages can alter more often than every 6 months. So they require a semi-annual calculation. Mortgages in the US always give annual percentage rates. But that means this could be different. By the way, I did graph balance remaining at every point throughout the year, but you can see how slowly that goes down at the beginning and then crashes at the end. I'm paying very little towards principal over the first 10 years or so. It takes me quite a while to get down. Some mortgages require fees. As a matter of fact, if you look at the real estate pages in the newspaper, I know, crazy idea, look at the newspaper. Go to your favorite news website, look at the real estate pages. You'll see fees called points added. Points are literally extra interest charged to you so that the lender or the agent can make a profit. They raise the interest rate by a point, 1 extra percent, and that's not paid as a risk premium. That's paid as pure profit to the seller agent, the buyer agent, whoever. Sometimes the fee gets rolled into the loan. As a matter of fact, that was what I actually changed here. That extra $5,000 here, remember, it's a $250,000 loan. That's 2%. I just borrow that and add it into the principal, and then my payment goes up every month, and now I am actually charged a little bit extra in interest. And there's a way to calculate that right here in Excel using the rate calculation, number of periods, payment, present value. You can actually give it all this information and it will generate for me the exact loan. On the other hand, sometimes I pay the fee up front. I pay it in cash. It's part of the closing money needed to close the loan. In that case, they might take it out of the principal borrowed and apply it to my principal, and then my payment changes the other way. But notice they adjusted the rate to compensate for that. On page 177, there's a discussion of the subprime loan events that led up to it. And there's a lot of very interesting discussion here about the way in which interest rates changed, both from that and through the pandemic. I recommend that you listen to a thing that's on our Canvas page that I put there. Let me get to our Canvas page. There's a web link here. Toxie, the toxic asset. When the housing crisis occurred, all of those mortgage-backed securities became underwater. People walked away from their mortgage loans. NPR bought one. They went out and bought a slice of a mortgage asset, and then they went to find the people whose loans were involved. So they went to talk to the human beings who walked away from their mortgages or who were still trying to pay, who were defaulting and who weren't. That entire story is in here. There's a recording and a transcript. It's about a 30-minute listen. And I think it's a really good story to hear, to try and think about what happens when people default and what the reality of the situation is to other human beings. As much as I believe the system is inherently flawed, I think it's one of the better systems we have. What happened with mortgage-backed securities was a disaster. And it's why laws like the Sarbanes-Oxley law went into effect and why changes were made to lending policy and to financial derivatives. I did not talk about something that we can do with our amortization schedule. One of the things I was told is if you can make one extra payment a year, you'll cut 40% of your interest off because that extra payment will go directly to principal. Lowers your loan amount, right? Lowers your future interest payments. We could add another rolling payment in once a year Same time every year. I don't know, whenever you have your extra money. I got my Christmas bonus. We'll do it on January 1st. You could roll that in and see the effect on that graph of outstanding balance. And you'll pay the loan off early. Some loans have penalties for prepayment, and some don't. You have to look at the loan terms. But that's the end of chapter 3. Chapters got shorter. So since you just turned in chapter 2, that means 2 class periods, not Tuesday, not Thursday, the following Tuesday, because Tuesday's fall break. I don't get to see you. It'll be due a week from Tuesday. Questions?
So the 13th payment didn't have any interest on?
No, because it's not part of the schedule, right? It'd just be an extra direct principal payment. And some banks actually allow you to do that every time, right? You could put an extra amount on principal every month if you wanted to.
Would it have to be the same time?
Nope. It could be. It depends on the, right, yeah, it depends on the loan written. My home mortgage had a line in every slip that I wrote. It said, do you want to pay extra principal? Put it here. And if I could, I did. I will see you all next week. Have a wonderful break and enjoy yourselves.